Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Allen with several different groups. The Homunculus group, HOMUNCULUS group.com, soon to be thegateguys.com, and also with Wanna Get Fast, WANNAGETFAST, with our friends Dan Fichter and Chris Korfist, and also with Dr. Ivo Weierlop out of Colorado. And today we're going to follow up on some more of our gait videos and foot-related mechanics videos. This video will eventually lead you into some questions as to how to fix your patient, your client, your athlete, and we'll forward you to some DVDs that will help you do that. The first thing that I want to just go over, and we've gone over this in some of our other DVDs, is just very briefly the foot tripod. The foot, when in normal mechanical positioning and functioning, has really three spots of contact: the heel, the lateral fifth metatarsal head, and the medial first metatarsal head. When these three spots are like a tripod or on the ground, the tripod is stable. We're going to return to that concept at the end of this little clip, but a stable foot with all three tripod anchors in place will have a stable arch that will not collapse. For example, if you were to let this first metatarsal tripod spill outwards, you'll see that the foot will collapse. So the ability to maintain medial tripod stability is important. In other words, you should be asking yourself, how do I anchor this down more appropriately to maintain the arch, as opposed to putting an orthotic underneath there and artificially lifting the foot. So the concept I wanted to talk about today is something that we see a lot of in our runners. And we see a lot of runners, and that runners are a very unique group of people. They've become very posterior chain driven, so glutes, hamstrings, and calf for a lot of push-off activity. The problem is that as the miles go up and the activity goes up, and or combined with poor running biomechanics, the amount of strength and tension builds up in the posterior compartment but doesn't build up appropriately because of training or poor mechanics, etc. It doesn't build up reciprocally to the same ratio or the same amount in the anterior compartment. So you start to get an offset of more weakness and more strength and tension. This creates a deficit in the sagittal plane. The problem being that as the tone goes up and it's constantly at a higher tone and more use and more contraction, this muscle group tends to shorten. Some of that is just because of the nature of the training, but also some of it is because as the ratio between anterior and posterior compartment starts to diverge, this is deemed as weakness as compared to the amount of strength. So what happens is a concept that we always talk about, which is ankle rocker. You have heel rocker, you hit contact, now the tibia and fibula rocker over the talus. What happens is if you get too much tension in the posterior compartment, as you approach more ankle rocker, and remember we said we need to get past 90 degrees, we need to get to about 100 to 110 degrees. If there's too much shortness in the back posterior compartment, ankle rocker will stop. At that point, they still need to move forward. This is something we talk about in some of our other DVDs. There are several strategies that you can go through. The strategy we'll talk about today is basically foot collapse or pronation. As they hit that rocker point, they're stuck. Notice what happens as I drop down. If I cave in the arch, this talus will drop and it will plantar flex. And when I do that, you will see the tibia tilt forward. That will get us to 100 to 110 degrees. Now they can appropriately get to forefoot. The problem is they're getting to forefoot rocker on a collapsed foot. So now they're getting to here and they can collapse through here. This creates further pathology within the tib posterior and whatnot. Let's take a step backwards and talk about the anatomy of this posterior compartment for just a minute. You've got the medial gastroc head coming from the distal femur, attaching into the Achilles tendon, which starts about right here and attaches into the calcaneus. You've got the lateral gastroc, which comes down, attaches into the Achilles tendon here. This is a two-joint muscle. It's considered two-joint, crossing the knee and the ankle, although if you wanted to be detail-oriented, it crosses both the mortise and the subtalar joint. It's not referred to as a three-joint muscle. It's just kind of thought of crossing the knee and ankle, so it's really traditionally thought of as a two-joint muscle. What's more interesting, though, is the soleus, which also blends in with this posterior compartment known as the triceps surae. The soleus attaches to both the back of the tibia and the fibula in a horseshoe, and then attaches down into the Achilles tendon and into the Achilles, or into the calcaneus. What's interesting is it attaches to both of these, so when this muscle contracts, it pulls the tibia and fibula together, squeezing them down here at the ankle mortise. This is important because the ankle mortise, the talus, is triangular shaped. It's wider in the front and it's narrower in the back, so it's triangle shaped. What happens normally as you rock her over, you're going from the small part of the triangle to the wide part. So as you move forward, these two bones need to separate apart to accommodate the wider talus. If your posterior compartment is tight and you're trying to progress forward, these two bones do not separate. And as you're progressing forward, what happens is you start to pinch on that and you start to create a binding at the joint, which then helps further lock these two together, driving the arch down again. As well, there's a muscle in the back called the tib posterior. The tibialis posterior obviously comes off the back of the tibia, but it also, being a bipinnate muscle, meaning having two heads, also comes off the fibula. So it's very much like the soleus, and it can contract, pulling these two together when it contracts. When you come up onto your foot to push off, you want the soleus and the tib posterior to contract. When they do, they squeeze these two together, pinching down here and giving you stability across the ankle. That's normal mechanics. The problem is when you're moving over an ankle rocker, though, if these two are increased in tone or they're short, you get a binding across this joint. Naturally, then you would think, well, if you just stretch these muscles, we will free up the length that we need in order to progress